Everything that I share in this workshop is based on something that I personally learned, I have personally experienced, and put into action in my own life. That's how I can truthfully say that I know without a doubt that this works. This information truly, truly works if you're willing to put it into practice and make it a daily habit. I recently had a woman tell me that she finds my messages hard to take. When I post on social media or when I post a video, she mentioned that sometimes it's difficult for her to listen to them. And I told her, she said, when I read something that you post about your childhood, I can't comprehend going through such a life and it makes me feel uncomfortable. That's what she told me. But as we talked about it, she realized she was trying to use my story to rationalize her own childhood. During our conversation, she said things like, I thought it was awful to have to live with what I lived with until I read one of your posts. And then I realized my life wasn't so bad. But I reminded her that trauma is trauma. There is no trauma that is better or worse than what someone else experienced as their trauma. Feeling guilty about wanting to express sadness, guilt, fear, anger, blame, or shame only means you're holding on to those negative emotions inside you. Allowing yourself to express what you're thinking and be honest with how you're really feeling, that's what's going to set you free. And I've explained to her that because I've learned to do the inner work and have healed from the negative experiences of my past, I'm now able to use my experiences as teachable moments without the emotional triggers. And that's what I want for you here. I really want this for you. I really want you to be able to hold on to this information and put it into practice in your daily life until you can talk about your story or any experience that you had in your childhood and share it from a place of power instead of a place of pain. I want that for you. And my guess is that you want that for you too, or you would not have attracted this video into your life. We all have the choice to continue feeling like a victim and blaming others for who we've become, or to choose to let go of victim beliefs and live in our power. We are all more powerful than we know. We all have the ability to see ourselves as the gifted and talented person we are. The only reason we can't see our gifts and talents is because we're holding on to a belief that's keeping us from knowing who we are. My mother once said to me that she and I used to clash when I got to a certain age. I suggested she look at the memory with a different perspective. We didn't clash. I simply got to a point where I no longer believed I was the person she kept telling me I was. When I was no longer willing to believe I was worthless and would always be worthless, what she describes as us clashing is actually her inability to understand why I no longer saw my value the way she saw my value. If you're having difficulty allowing yourself the honesty of what you're feeling because you've been taught to keep it to yourself, I encourage you to give yourself the gift of loving who you are. And you truly are doing that by taking this workshop, by going through this information, and I encourage you to watch it over and over and over until it becomes something you've mastered. That's what it's all about. When we master something, it means that we've done it so many times that it becomes part of our daily routine. We're doing it without even thinking about it. And when you do something so subconsciously that you don't even have to think about it, that's truly, truly empowering your life, it's the best gift you can give yourself. Everything you're keeping bottled up inside of you is building momentum. The question you have to ask yourself is, do you want that momentum to explode in happiness or more sorrow? So, what is your story? What brought you to this video? What made you go searching and the result was you found this video? And not only found this video, but I just want to take a moment to say congratulations, because the fact that you invested in yourself and you are watching this video should tell you that you're truly looking for an answer. You're truly ready to move forward. You're truly ready to go beyond your story. So, what is your current story? What brought you to this masterclass? What brought you to this workshop? What brought you to this video? What brought you to this information? What were you in search of? We're going to go through this presentation and just stop it at any time when something comes up for you. Whenever you have a thought and you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't think of that. Whenever something comes up for you about this, just pause the video and write it down. I hope you have paper and pencil with you as you're watching through this, because this is where you're going to start giving yourself permission to say, wow, I never realized I was thinking about this. But your story, it's something that you're thinking about over and over and over. It's that story that brought you here to this video, to this work, to this class. So it's that story, that experience that you're still experiencing in your mind, or that you're reliving. And you're not only thinking about it, but you're talking about it either to yourself or to other people. And every time you share it, it's gaining momentum. So what is your current story? And how do you feel when you share it? Because how you feel when you think about it and when you talk about it is what is creating your reality. So what do I mean by that? Well, if you come from a place where your experience is one of abuse, look at where abuse might be occurring in your life. And if you say, oh no, abuse is not occurring in my life, this is where we're going to make the really amazing distinction of, okay, so maybe you don't have abuse in your life, but what does it feel like to have the abuse? And really give yourself permission to stop and pay attention to those feelings. Now, you might not be coming from a place of abuse. It might be something else that brought you to this class, but I'm using abuse as an example. So, for instance, abuse can feel, you could feel shame, you can feel guilty, you could feel stupid, and stupid, like, I can't believe that I just couldn't get it right and that I had to keep going through that over and over and over. So it's really, really important for you to be distinctual about how you feel when you think about your story. What are the feelings that come up for you when you think about your story? And this might not be something that's really easy for you to do, because chances are, if you're still being triggered by it, you have not allowed yourself to pay attention to how you feel about it. Because when you're feeling negative, you don't want to feel that way. And so we do things so that we don't have to feel that way, right? We become addicted to something. We turn to drugs, alcohol, sex, running, exercise, retail therapy. There's so many things that we can do to preoccupy our mind so that we don't have to stop and feel what it feels like when we think or share our story. Now, also, pay attention to your triggers, because it doesn't matter if whatever brought you to this class happened to you one time or over and over and over again. The thing is, it's like when you think about it, it's bothering you, meaning it's triggering you. Something is coming up for you about it. And once you identify the feelings around it, now you can start to pay attention to the triggers, like what's triggering you in your now moments, what's triggering you currently, presently. Because if your story doesn't feel good, meaning positive, you're going to hear me use the words positive or negative throughout this, because there is no right or wrong, there is no good or bad, there's only how you feel. So if you're constantly thinking about or sharing your story with another person, and you have negative feelings and emotions around it, you're continually setting yourself up for mental, physical, and emotional struggle. And depending on what it was, you're also going to bring that negative emotional struggle into your mental, physical, financial, and spiritual lifestyle. Here are just a few triggers. Think about, like, are you always angry? Do you find that maybe you're quick to anger and there are certain people who just tick you off and you're like, oh my gosh, pay attention to your anger. What about guilt? Maybe there's something that you did, a path that you chose to get from where you were to where you are, but you look back and you think you have guilt about it. For instance, maybe you had siblings in your family who are still struggling, or maybe you left the house and left that environment and you left them behind and you feel guilty. It's really, really important to be honest with yourself throughout this whole process, because if you don't know what you're feeling, if you're not ready to look at what's really going on behind the curtain, if you're resisting any of these emotional triggers, because let's face it, it doesn't feel good to have these emotional triggers. But if you're resisting them and you've just got it to a place where you say, I did what I had to do and I'm not going to feel guilty about it. Well, of course, if you're saying you're not going to feel guilty, you're feeling guilty. So pay close attention to these. Now, if you're familiar with the law of attraction is just like the law of gravity, the law of mathematics, the law of physics. And what the law of attraction is all about, it's about energy, because everything is energy. We are all energy. We are all part of one big energetic field. Depending on how fast or the direction that people or objects vibrate depends on the shape. So think about, you are this vibrating, pulsating being of energy. And because you are energy, whatever you are feeling, that's where you're vibrating. That's how you are attracting. So if you go back to those triggers and you're thinking about, well, yeah, I feel guilt. Well, okay, so guilt, what does that feel like? It's a very negative feeling. And when you're feeling guilt and you're steeped in guilt, you're going to make choices in your life based on kind of feeding that feeling. And the reason for that is because that's what feels normal to you. You recognize it. It's your identity. It just feels like your way of life because you've lived with it for so long. This is why it's really important to remember it's not about right or wrong or good or bad. Because when I tell you that you're thinking about it, you're feeling it, that's where you're vibrating, and so you're attracting it, it can be very easy to say, well, that's crazy. Why would I attract anything that I don't want? That doesn't make sense to me. But you have to remember that we are beings of energy. Everything is energy, and we attract based on how we feel. So the story that you keep telling yourself, whether it's about something in the past or something that you want to do that you haven't achieved yet, you have a vibration. That means your feelings. You have a feeling about it. And wherever you're vibrating, that's what you're calibrating to. And calibration is nothing more than just like tuning in. Like if you were tuning in a radio dial. If you want to go to Spotify and listen to classic rock, you can't tune into country and western and get upset that you're not hearing classic rock, because it doesn't work that way. It's the same thing with the law of attraction. So it's really, really important, if you're doing this work and if you're going to be committed to doing this work, that you allow yourself to pay attention to what you're creating on an energetic level. Because have you ever known one day you get up and you're like, hey, today I'm not going to do gravity. I think I just won't do gravity today. I think I'll just walk sideways up a tree. It doesn't work. Just like the law of gravity, there is no changing, and it's always working, whether you know it or not. So is the law of attraction. So whether you understand it or not, and whether you believe it or not, it is working. Now let's go back to calibrating. Remember, it's about what you're feeling, where you're vibrating. So if you go from 0 to 10, 0 being the most negative that you can feel or vibrate, and 10 being the highest possible that you can feel or vibrate, now you start to think, oh, well, what am I feeling right now? And you think about your story, and then you ask yourself, okay, the experience that brought me to this workshop, when I think about it, when I think about that story, how am I feeling? Am I feeling more negative or more positive? Now, you know that you've been feeling very negative about it. Otherwise, you would not have attracted this class into your awareness. Remember, everything is energy. But here's the good news. The fact that you've attracted this class into your life is telling you that you're ready to do the work. You're ready to let go. So you should be jumping for joy and going, all right, I'm all over it. Let's go. What else? What's next? Now, here's something to think about. What if somebody held something out and said, oh, this smells horrible. Smell it. Would you lean in and smell it? No, you would be like, okay, I take your word for it. Or if you put something in your mouth and it tasted nasty, you'd probably spit it out. Now, you don't smell something that you don't want to smell, and you don't taste something and keep eating it if you don't like the way it tastes. But we don't think about that when it comes to our feelings, because we're so used to feeling negative that we just feel like, well, that's the way of life, right? That's just how I've always felt. Sometimes I get in the doldrums. Sometimes I feel depressed. Sometimes I feel guilty. Sometimes I feel ashamed. What are you going to do about it? But now you're starting to understand you have a choice. And this workshop, this class, this information is so golden, because now you're starting to kind of look at those beliefs that you had about not having a choice, and you can say, you mean there's a different way? Because you don't know what you don't know. I think it was Maya Angelou that said, do what you know until you know better, and then do better. So of course, if you're feeling negative about something that happened, and then you're heaping more negativity on top of it because you're beating yourself up over not being able to let it go or not being able to work through it, that means that you just keep choosing to smell that bad smell or taste that negative, yucky thing that you were tasting. So you do not have to feel bad. It does not have to be your way of life. Now, here's the first thing that you want to ask yourself. The very first step in doing this work. What is the story that you're currently telling yourself? We talked about that a little bit at the beginning of this presentation. So now stop the video, take the time to sit with pen and paper and put down your story. What is the story that you were thinking about, or that you keep reliving, or keep being re-triggered by, that brought you to this class? You know it, there's something, and maybe you don't really know what it is just yet. You just know, my gosh, I'm so tired of my life being the way that it is, and you're looking for answers. Because, when I first started doing this work, I was having really, really bad nightmares. And having these nightmares, I would wake up the next morning and I would think, oh my gosh, why do I keep having these nightmares? I mean, they were so horrible, they would probably make Stephen King go running for cover. And I couldn't understand why I was having these nightmares. And one day I just fell to my knees to the floor and I just said, make it stop. I want it to stop. I can't live like this anymore. Maybe your story right now is simply, I can't live like this anymore. And this is why this work is so powerful, because you don't have to keep reliving the experience. All you have to know is how you feel, and you're done feeling that way, and you're ready to make it stop. You're ready to let it go. So your story, if it's about what you're feeling, this is a great place to be. So whether you actually write out, well, this happened and I feel this way, or because maybe you don't really remember the experience. Maybe your story is simply, I'm so tired of feeling guilty. I'm so tired of attracting negative people into my life. I'm so tired of never having my needs met. What is your story? What is the story that brought you to this class? This is where the gold is. This is where you're taking that step to say, this is what I want to let go of. The next question to ask yourself is, why are you telling yourself this story? Why are you thinking about it? Are you telling other people about it? Why are you sharing the story? What is it doing for you when you tell this story to yourself or to other people? I mean, are you trying to get something out of you? You're like, I'm looking for commiseration. I'm still feeling like a victim. And I feel like when I share the story that I don't feel like such a victim anymore. I know when I first started sharing my story, when I said, that's it, I'm done. I am not keeping these secrets anymore. I'm going to talk about what happened. I'm going to talk about the sexual abuse from my childhood. I'm going to talk about the physical abuse from my childhood. I don't care who doesn't want to hear it. I'm getting it out of me and I'm going to talk about it. And when I started sharing my story, when I started talking about it, I thought that made me empowered because I thought, hey, this is great. I am no longer keeping this a secret. I don't care what anyone who was involved thinks. I am not keeping this to myself anymore. And I thought that made me empowered. But it took me a while to understand that I was still sharing my story from a place of pain. And I know that because when I would share the story, I would be emotionally triggered. I would start crying. So you want to get to a place where you recognize I'm sharing this story or I'm thinking about this story. It's making me cry or making me angry or whatever it is that it's making you feel or go through. So why are you telling yourself this story? What's coming up for you? Be very clear on this step. Why do you keep sharing it? Because if your answer is like mine was, like, I don't want to keep the secret anymore. I'm tired of feeling like this. I'm tired of all of these secrets. I'm tired of not just being able to be me. There is a why to your story. So take time with this step. Now, how does thinking about or telling your story make you feel? Are you tired of me asking you how you feel yet? Well, that's what this work is all about. It's about feeling your feelings. What is it when you're sitting with your own thoughts, when you're off just kind of meditating or thinking or maybe reliving something? What are you feeling? And how does thinking about or telling your story make you feel? I mean, does it make you feel frustrated? Now, you might say, well, it makes me angry. But it's important to know that anger is a surface emotion. So when you say you feel angry, there are actually many feelings beneath that feeling, that emotion of anger. It's the same way when you say, I feel fear. Fear and anger are surface emotions. So you want to keep going down, keep drilling down. Okay, but how does it make me feel? This work is so powerful and so freeing if you will allow yourself to really feel your feelings. Because I can promise you, once you allow yourself to feel your feelings and you can share your story from a place of power instead of a place of pain, and it no longer makes you cry, that's when you know, this, this I know now is how I am meant to feel. So positive, so full of joy, so full of happiness, so full of love of life. This is how I'm meant to feel. Now, again, we're going to ask why. Why does your story make you feel that way? Because you know what we actually do? We actually try to argue for our own limitations in this step. So, for instance, when my teacher was telling me, Nancy, if you don't let go, if you don't feel your feelings and feel your way out of this so that you can completely let go of these triggers, then you're going to keep reliving this over and over and over. And I would get so upset and frustrated. And I was like, are you kidding me? Did you just hear what I said? Did you hear that I said my father used to strip me naked and beat me with a fiberglass fishing rod in front of our whole family to punish me? Do you know how that feels? You see, I wanted to hold on to those negative stories. I wanted those stories to keep fueling and feeding the anger and the frustration and the guilt and the shame that I was feeling around that story, because that's what I knew. That's what was familiar to me. And that's how I identified with who I am. But we want to let go of that, don't we? Of course we do. If you didn't, you would not have invested in this class. I wanted to let go of that. That's what had me drop to my knees and say, I'm done. I'm done. I don't want this anymore. Please make it go away. So it's really, really important to know, why do you keep feeling these feelings when you share your story? And be so kind to yourself and loving to yourself right now. Please never, never beat yourself up and say, I should be able to let this go. I should be farther along than I am. I shouldn't have to take this class to be told this. I should know this. Please be kind and loving to yourself and know that you are taking steps to let go. And that's where the huge gift is for you. So are you ready to go beyond your story? This is the next question that you want to ask yourself. Now, it's also important to ask why or why not. Because like me, when I first started understanding this and learning this and was being taught this, and my teacher would say, you need to let this go, I was not ready to let it go. And the reason was, no, you don't understand. This is horrible. This was a horrible thing. I don't know what to do with it. You see, I wasn't ready to let it go as long as I felt the need to keep explaining why it was so horrible or so traumatic or so hurtful or so shameful. Now, here's a really, really important thing for you to know. When you ask yourself, am I ready to let this go? Am I ready to go beyond this story? Whatever your answer is, why or why not, that's exactly the answer that you need right now, because that's where you are right now in this moment. And it's not until you can be completely honest with yourself that you'll be able to go beyond your story. So give yourself permission to be wherever you are right now, because wherever you are, that's the gold. You're starting to say, oh, okay, I'm in charge here. I have a choice. Now, I've talked a lot about feelings throughout this. I want you to stop and think about, your feelings are your internal GPS, just like the GPS on your phone. It's taking you where you want to go, and your feelings are doing the same thing. So if you're thinking about your story and you're sharing your story and you feel a negative emotion, that is your internal GPS saying, do you really want to keep going in this direction? And of course, just like me, when I dropped to my knees that day and said, please make this stop. And quite honestly, it could be where you are right now. Otherwise, why else would you have invested in this class? You're saying, no, I do not want to go in that direction anymore. I want to go in the direction of joy, happiness. I want to love myself. I want to attract other people who love me. I want to attract more happiness into my life. I want to laugh more. I want to have more fun. See, your internal GPS will guide you there. And you will be able to do this when you really understand and make it a daily practice to pay attention to how you're feeling. So your internal guidance system, whatever you want to call it, your soul, God, the universe, inner being, source, everyone has different names for it. But it always lets you know where you stand based on how you're feeling, which is what we call, energetically, where you're vibrating. So remember, whatever you're going to call it, if you think, oh, no, God is the name for me, great. I don't care if you call it a rock, whatever you call it, whatever makes the most sense to you, give yourself permission to know that that internal guidance will get you to where you'd rather be instead of having to be triggered and re-triggered and reliving this emotionally. Here's another thing. Your internal GPS, God, the universe, source, internal being, whatever it is that you ask for, have you ever put directions in your phone and had your GPS say to you, why do you want to go there? You were there yesterday. Do you really want to go there again? No, it does not. It's never going to give you a hard time. And neither will the internal GPS, God, the universe, source. It will never give you a hard time because it is this loving being of energy that is like just holding this space for you. And if you need to be in that place when you go back and ask the question, are you ready to go beyond your story? Why or why not? If you're not quite ready to let go, because maybe you just have this belief that it's not possible, it's okay. It's okay. Because your GPS will take you from point A to point B, but you don't have to take the most direct route, right? You can take the scenic route. You can go whichever way you want to go. However long it takes you to get there, that's up to you. You have a choice. You can take the path of least resistance, meaning the straight shot from A to B, or you can take the scenic route. But the choice is yours. You have free will. Now, the next question that you want to ask yourself, when you've answered all these questions and you're thinking about this and you're thinking about your story, ask yourself, do I feel heard by the universe or God or your inner being, the creator? Do I trust the universe? How does your story define your faith? Now, your faith, a lot of people think your faith is like religion, but your faith is basically like, what are you putting all your thoughts, focus, and emotion towards? That's your faith. If you feel, believe, think that nothing is ever going to change, then that's what you're putting your faith in. Because faith is simply believing in something that you cannot yet see, right? So if you get in the car and you put the directions on your GPS, you have faith that your GPS is going to get you where you want to go. Now, do you have that much faith in the process of this work that you're doing? Do you have faith that there is a creator, the universe, an inner being, God, that will guide you in the direction that you prefer to be? Now, again, the answer, yes or no. You either have that faith or you don't have that faith. You either have faith and no, nothing could ever be better for me, or you have faith in, yes, I believe there's something better and that's where I want to go. Or if your faith is in, no, I don't believe this could possibly work for me Okay, but remember, whichever faith you choose, that's what you're going to attract more of into your life. You're going to attract more feelings. So you're going to be attracting people and experiences into your life to continue feeling those feelings because that's what you're putting your trust in. That's what you're putting your faith in. And remember, everything is energy. Law of attraction. Law of attraction attracts like unto like. It's not judging you. It's not saying, oh my gosh, you shouldn't be doing this. It just is. So whatever you choose, if you choose to keep smelling something that smells awful, great. No, nobody is saying you shouldn't be doing that. You have free will. If you keep eating something that tastes awful and you just don't ever want to spit it out, great. You know, the choice is yours. You have free will. But when you get used to asking yourself these questions, every time you feel a negative emotion or feeling come up, when you get in the habit of asking yourself these 5 questions, every time you experience something that you don't want to experience, you'll start to see like, oh, I get it. This is a choice. I'm either having faith in what I don't want, or I'm having faith in what I do want. Which way do I want to go? Remember, everything is physics. Law of attraction, the law of mathematics, the law of physics, the law of gravity. These things never change. Everything is physics. Everything is energy. And everything that I've talked about here can be backed up by science. So whether you come from a religious background or a scientific background, remember, religion is taught by people, and spirituality is of the universe. Spirituality is the feeling. So spirituality, metaphysics, science, they all go hand in hand now. And all of this information, if you were raised with a particular religious dogma, and that is one of the things that's holding you back, you're holding on to something that you were taught based on religious dogma that you're saying, you know, all well and good, but I was taught that there's a deity up in the sky who's judging me and saying, yes, you can have this, and no, you can't have this, and you have to suffer a little bit more, or whatever it is that you were taught growing up. You know, between the ages of birth to 7 years of age, we've learned everything that's created our beliefs, and it's cemented in our minds. And then we take these beliefs with us into adulthood. And we're walking around as adults, still making choices based on childhood beliefs, beliefs that we don't even really know that we can let go of. But you can. And that's what we're doing here. We're letting go of those negative beliefs that were created in childhood. And those beliefs come from what people teach us, either by your parents or caregivers, those people that were around you the most. And of course, why and how do they teach us? Based on how and why they were taught. So much of what's taught to us is generational, it's cyclical. So chances are, if you come from abusive parents, you grow up to be angry, and it's easy for you to lash out, and you may find yourself being abusive to your own children. It's cyclical because it's about vibration, it's about feeling. And it's not until you realize that there is another choice. Life doesn't have to be that way. So everything you learned was either by something someone taught you or what you intuited based on experience. So isn't it wonderful to know that you no longer have to hold on to those things? You can change those beliefs. You can let go of your limiting beliefs. Your mind is a library of stories, just like a library full of books. It has millions and millions of stories. Think of the biggest library that you can think of, and you go in and you're like, I could read this book, and I could read that book, and I could read this story. Well, your mind is the same way. So at any given time, when you have a relationship and you don't know, like, how do I deal with this person? How do I relate to this person? You go to that library in your mind and you say, okay, this is how I was taught to do this. This is how I believe if I make this choice, this is going to be the right or wrong thing to do. Remember, every one of these stories in the library of your mind is based on something that you were taught or intuited as a child. So wouldn't it be cool if you could start getting rid of all the books that no longer serve you? You can start getting rid of all the stories that no longer serve you. You have the ability to do this. Remember, you remind yourself, what is this story that I'm telling myself? Am I ready to let this go? And then whatever your answer is, yes or no, it's okay. It's okay. Be okay with where you are in the moment, because the kinder you are to yourself, the gentler you are with yourself, the more loving you are to yourself, that's where you feel that reassurance. And that's where you start to feel like, maybe I can do this. Maybe I can let this go. Maybe there is another way to look for it. Maybe there is another way to look at this. Maybe I can go beyond this story, even if it's just a little bit. I would prefer to put my faith in going beyond this story instead of putting my faith in this story cannot change. So here's your next step. Apply what you've learned. Nothing that you've learned here today is going to do you any good unless you learn to apply it to your life. You know, there's a saying, knowledge is power, but knowledge is not power. Applied knowledge is power. So what are you going to do now that you have this information? On the PDF that you downloaded with this class, there are links that you can go to. There are more helpful links, meditations, other things that you can do to keep taking this work forward. What do you want to do? Maybe your next step is, I'd like to have an hour with you, Nancy. I would like to have a one-on-one session with you, Nancy. And I've given you that opportunity. I've given you the opportunity to have that one-on-one. Because love yourself enough to say, I want this to change. I reached out and I invested in myself, and I'm doing this because I want something to change. And be okay with wherever you are. Maybe the links are sufficient for you. Maybe this video is sufficient for you. Be okay with wherever you are. Be kind and loving to yourself for whatever the next choice is for you, whatever the next step is for you. But pay attention to this information. Watch this video every single day if you have to. And you'll find that your story will start shifting and changing and morphing into something more positive, because you're going to get to that point where you're going to say, yeah, I'm not going to keep doing this. I'm done with this. And that's so, so, so fun. When you start looking at yourself in the mirror and you say, oh my God, I love you. I love who you are. When you start having more fun in your life, when you find that you're laughing more, when you find that you actually start saying, oh my gosh, I love my life. That is what I want for you. And if that's what you want for you, then please, for your next step, apply what you've learned. In the meantime, this is Nancy Muller, the one and only Life Sensei, saying ciao for now.